in this job. You got to know where to put the camera. And John Matheson always delivers. John did the original Gladiator. He did an incredible job. So I wanted him back.
The photography in this film is absolutely extraordinary. John kept it tied to the visual language of the first, but expanding it beyond that.
He's so confident in placing so many cameras in different places to catch an action from start to finish.
What he did with navigating a camera crew that's probably the size of most film crews on a normal film was a sight to behold.
Nothing John does is by chance. He puts context into every moment and makes it interesting.
What he delivers is so unbelievably dynamic. It's a testament to him and Ridley building the vision of this film.
Writing is the most important entity you can possibly have before beginning anything. When I started to think about a sequel, I met with David Scarpa, and we sat and talked because I had certain parts in my head.
He said, essentially, I'd like you to start writing Gladiator 2, and of course, I was really excited. There was a lot of wrestling with all the specific challenges that go with having a movie that's 25 years later, having a movie where both the hero and the villain die at the very end. But the first movie, in its wisdom, teed up this character of Lucius. And that created the idea of telling the story almost like the Odyssey, in a sense. The Odyssey takes place many years after the end of the Iliad. So it's the idea of picking up these characters much further down the road and telling a story from a very different point of view.
The story they came up with, it was brilliant. It speaks to a deep human experience.
The idea that struck me as most interesting is the idea of somebody who has been cast to the wind and has fled from Rome and been cut off from everything. We wanted to create this kind of Shakespearean rage within Lucius, which is the idea that the most bitter thing that he could possibly find upon returning to Rome is that his mother is with the guy who killed his wife and destroyed his city.
Use your rage in my service, and you will have his head.
It drives him further from Rome, and so it gives him much further to go when he finally does this 180 over the course of the movie.
The gates of hell are open night and day. We are amused.
We knew we wanted to have these sort of emperor characters that were from history, but we didn't want to be so direct as to simply redo the first narrative. And so we chose instead the idea of setting up a bunch of possible nemeses.
Politics follows power.
So a lot of it was about these sort of red herrings or morally ambiguous characters that might go one way or the other, and then weaving our way towards realizing that Macrinus is the greatest danger.
Rome must fall. You will be my instrument.
I will never be your instrument in this life or the next.
Lucilla was always the emotional center of it. It's about these two people are torn apart from one another and how they become reunited. I think that's a really powerful driver in movies, is this idea of having two people that you know belong together and yet seeing them split apart.
Now that I've found you, I am not afraid.
One of the big questions was, how are we going to manifest Maximus in the movie? Because even if he's not there on screen, he's there dramatically. And how do you create his spirit within the movie without actually having him walking around whispering in Lucius' ear?
Take your father's strength. His name was Maximus, and I see him in you.
But ultimately, we wanted to deliver something that is not the same and yet is worthy of standing next to the first film.
Here we are.
It's good to be back. Bigger and better than ever.
Arthur Max's production design is of a caliber that is incomparable.
Arthur did the original Gladiator. He did an incredible job. So I wanted him back.
Ridley said to me, we're going to go for scale on this one. We're going to build everything bigger. 0 - 2 we all know, till we shoot. Which means we got a hell of a lot of work to do.
We built a 5-story real Roman Colosseum. All the streets, all the buildings were full scale.
This is real. It's nothing like having the real thing.
What's crazy, right?
This set is really the size of a small town. There's an uptown and a downtown, several back streets. There's the bad neighborhood.
There is something so incredible about these sets, both huge and in very personal context.
Arthur Max is at the top of his game. You really see the detail and its mastery.
All of these are going to be up in the niches of the Colosseum. The creation of the ancient world, it's a team sport. There's all different departments. Who are on the first one working with me? Set dressing, props, greenery, construction, art department, production. We have to give credit to John Matheson, what is called the Valerium.
What the structure does and what the sun does with the shadows reminds you of how big it was.
I've been on some major sets. I've not been on a set like this one. Others created the real thing. You're seeing it all play out, and it's epic.
This is the biggest film I've been on. It's huge. It's Cecil B. DeMille on steroids.
It's much larger scale than the first Gladiator.
Everything's handmade. Everything's hand-painted. Every angle is just beautiful.
The secret to all of this is skilled craftsmen and hard work. I think it's turned out beautifully, without question.
Arthur is one of the best I've ever worked with. He did a great job. I couldn't do this without him. I have been with Janti since Gladiator 1. Her talent is so formidable.
Ridley's vision is extraordinary. With Ridley, we always have costume villages of epic proportions. Having a crowd of extras is a challenge because you have a huge quantity of garments.
We just dress each person as they come. It just takes time.
I've never seen a movie with more ravishingly ornate costumes.
Janti was really inspired by the evolving fashions at the time.
Attention to detail is everything.
From the research down to the making, and then showing Ridley. It's a huge collaboration. I had the most wonderful crew: cutters, leather workers, metal workers, jewelers, embroiderers. Everything's made from scratch. So there's a whole wide mirage of amazing looks.
Janti Yates is absolutely extraordinary. Her work is unbelievably iconic.
David Crossman made 150 gladiators. Everyone is different, absolutely brilliant.
She's one of the great ones. I mean, look at me. The wardrobe, her beautiful costumes and the colors. I don't have to think or worry about anything. It is an art, choosing gladiators. I just put the clothes on and do my part.
Well, the first thing we did was we did a drone topographical survey of the two major sites, the Numidian fortress in Morocco and the Fort Ricasoli in Malta, where we built ancient Rome, so that we had a very accurate idea of the topography and the existing buildings very accurately. And then we did some drawings, plans and elevations, and then we built a physical model about the size of a ping pong table for each of those sets. For Morocco, we added on, the set was about 200 meters long to begin with, and about 12 to 15 meters high, depending on the area, because the topography undulated. But we added on another extension to that set to accommodate the port of another 45 or 50 meters. and gave it a stylistic makeover, so it seemed to be more like Numidia than it had been. It was designed as Jerusalem, if you remember, from Kingdom of Heaven. And then in Malta, we built another model of the entire Fort Ricasoli, as well as the studio tank, which we also used for water work, because we found it was easier to work in the dry and put the water in digitally afterwards than to be working in real water for practical reasons.
I think the first thing is you have a slight panic about the amounts of armor you have to do for the crowd in the space of around 12, 13 weeks. That's the first thing. Can we get all this stuff made in time? Because it doesn't really, weirdly, it doesn't exist in the numbers or in material that's suitable. You know, it has to be good for stunts and good for so many things. And it's, so there was a real race. As soon as we had the green light, we were just kind of hitting it, making armor all over the world, really. Poland, Australia, Budapest. It was just everywhere, in London. And then we had our own workshop doing the principal actors in London, in an old garden centre. And so we were doing Paul Mescal and Lucius and people like that there. And so it's just that kind of race against time, really. But, yeah.
Well, I think the first day for me was, as soon as we wrapped Napoleon, we were on a plane with Ridley and other heads of department to start looking at what we were going to do with Gladiator 2. And him saying, this time I want to go and try and recreate the true scale of ancient Rome. So we want to go big. And that was, pretty intimidating brief. We had to clear a lot of the areas of the sites that we had chose, a lot of earth moving just to get started, ground preparation. It was, an enormous scale of earth-moving equipment was the very beginning, and we hadn't done any of that for the original. So this was all new territory for us. And I think also the compressed schedule, the challenge was amplified exponentially because we had to be bigger and we had to be quicker.
The first day it was difficult because everyone was up on the ships attacking Numidia. So once people were on the ship, they'd take away the gangplank. You couldn't go on the ship. And so we were trying to line up Pedro Pascal in a nice way with his cloak, with some guys behind him with nice masks, with the animal heads on, so that you had a really nice, cool picture. So I've got somebody on the boat, I'm on the radio, they move him there, move him. So we're trying to arrange people, so everybody looks good in that kind of opening shot. That's the kind of big panic, because you worry in the kind of trying to get it done, you worry that you'll lose looks because if they get pushed to the back or whatever, so you're trying to protect what you've done, and try and get it into the frame, into the shot. So you're showing Ridley things, going, look, this looks good, and he's like, okay, put it in, and it's that kind of frantic kind of action. So that was day one, standing in the desert in Morocco. And then the last day, do you know what? The last day was it was Paul and Denzel fighting at the end at the gates of Rome, actually. That's what they were doing. And so they were just wet and not happy because they were so wet and fighting and stuff, But we had once again, we were trying to formulate a lovely shot for the end. There's a nice thing where it pans around all the Roman armies at the end, and there's a lovely shot. So we're just trying to get all the right people in all the right places, because everything means something. You've got centurions and officers and archers and all that kind of thing. So you're just trying to get it into the picture so it looks good, so it's arranged nicely.
Well, it was to get the Colosseum ready, because in the passage of time, 25 years, the standard of engineering and safety regulations had increased manifold. And the engineering on the first one was much more casual. The Valerium, for example, you know, the sunshade over the whole Colosseum that created shadows and was fully adjustable, as they would have had on the actual Colosseum, to keep the sun off the very important areas of nobility and imperial box area. That was increased in terms of the regulations. So we had to build a lot more strong structures. And that took a lot of time away from us for finishing.
I think it's whenever you're establishing something big or new. So you fitted everybody, but they're not quite finished. So you have that morning, you dress all the crowd with your team. You look at them, you either feel sick that they don't look very good, or you're happy that they look good. They come to set, and once again, it's all about getting them into the right place. So to me, they're the most challenging days, establishing. We all know it as establishing something, you know. So that becomes the most stressful kind of points. So they come up every couple of weeks, and with Ridley films, they come up every kind of 3 or 4 days, you know. So you're always kind of then you can relax a day or two. While once you've established something, you can kind of take a breath, you know. But when it's a new thing, it's quite difficult.